Hello, my name is John-Peter Ford, and I am a musicology graduate student in the Department of Music at the University of Mississippi. My presentation for the 2021 Graduate Research Symposium is on rediscovering George Chadwick and Robert Burnette's burlesque opera of Tabasco. In today's presentation, I will cover a brief history of the work, as well as some devices composer George Chadwick uses in his compositional style. In the 1990s, the heir of American composer George Chadwick discovered a trunk of Chadwick's papers that included materials related to his long and largely forgotten burlesque opera of Tabasco. Oftentimes referred to as the Dean of American Composers, Chadwick spent much of his career as the director of the New England Conservatory of Music. Born in Massachusetts in 1854, George Chadwick received his musical education in the late 1870s at the conservatory begun by Felix Mendelssohn in Leipzig, Germany. After his return to the United States, he began teaching at the New England Conservatory of Music in 1881. Chadwick would ascend to the directorialship in 1897 and retired in 1930. Grouped in the Second New England School of Composers with Arthur Foote, Edward MacDowell, and Amy Beach, Chadwick is considered to possess an American voice steeped in the vernacular of Cracker Barrel humor, fiddle tunes, and minstrel songs. His compositional output consists mainly of vocal and instrumental works. Of his very few works for the stage, only two are known to have been performed during his life. His only grand opera, The Padrone, was rejected by the Metropolitan Opera. Tabasco's libretto was provided by Robert Ayers Burnet, known posthumously as the Extravaganza King for his elaborate burlesque operas and stage works. The picture you see here of Barnet was as his performance of Isabella, the Daisy Queen of Spain, in his operetta 1492, commissioned by the cadets for the 400th anniversary of Columbus's voyage to the New World. Born in New York City in 1853, Barnet was the son of a box office bookkeeper at the Chambers Street Theater, just a few blocks away from his birthhouse. One could easily say that he was born into the theater. After the death of his father in 1860, the surviving family moved to Boston's South End neighborhood to be close to other relatives. Barnet would eventually drop out of school at the age of 15 to take a job in a local flour and grain firm, to where he would eventually climb the ladder to management before becoming a prolific playwright in Boston. The lion's share of his shows were completed for the Boston Men's Army Cadets. With Barnet's success in Boston, he would eventually move to New York and try his hand on Broadway, but due to changing tastes, he did not have much success after 1908 and would die in relative obscurity in 1933. The earliest scholarly work on Tabasco lies in Victor Yelland's dissertation he wrote while a student at Harvard in the 1960s. At the time of his work, only the piano vocal score and an incomplete version of the libretto were thought to have existed. It would not be until the trunk discovery when the autograph score, orchestral parts, and two additional copies of the libretti would surface. In both Chadwick biographies by Bill Fawcett and Marianne Betts, they speak only of Tabasco in passing, devoting very few pages to its discussion, understandable as their main sources of information of the work were Yelland's dissertation. Tabasco is set in the Bay of Tangier, Morocco, and centers around a Middle Eastern pasha who craves spicy food at all costs. When the pasha threatens his chef, an Irishman masquerading as a Frenchman, with death, the chef is forced to contemplate an escape, but instead runs into a blind beggar magician that concocts a potion so spicy and fiery the pasha is sure to love. By the end of the first act, the chef runs out of Tabasco and must act quickly to avoid death once again. The casting is structured just as one would expect for this style of light opera. Captain Marco is a baritone, Lola is a mezzo-soprano, Francois is a tenor, or in this case, more of a lyric baritone. The Grand Vizier is a baritone. Hasbina is a contralto. The Pasha is a bass, and Fatima is a soprano. The chorus of Moroccans, harem girls, guards, and chef not only comment on the action, but take place in the action as well. Throughout the history of Tabasco, it has been performed by 3 different production companies. The first is the Boston Men's Army Cadet, and their production opened the 30th of January in 1894. The second is a production under the hands of Thomas Seabrooke, which opened April 9th, 1894. And the third is the Revival of Tabasco that opened January 2018, led by Paul Maffray and the New Orleans Opera. This collaboration between Chadwick and Barnet was originally conceived as a fundraiser for Boston's First Corps of Army Cadets, an all-male group of Army cadets who were attempting to raise funding to build a new armory. Tabasco first opened January 29, 1894, and ran for 5 days in Boston's Tremont Theater. A resounding success, the show grossed around $26,000. As Victor Yellen wrote, Tabasco surpassed even the cadets' expectations. While the show did not gross enough funding to build the entire armory, it did provide funding, with the cadets naming part of the building after the show. Barnet's control over the production was so strong that he served as the stage manager and played the role of the Grand Vizier, wearing, as Anne Allison Barnet, his great-granddaughter, put it, a big loose oriental robe and a whole bale of cotton on his head. Unfortunately for Robert Barnet, this would be his last performance with the cadets in a show he authored, for the fact he couldn't sing. The Boston Herald put it this way: his impersonation has many points of merit, though he can be acquitted for any claims of distinction as a vocal artist. Barnet and Chadwick would eventually write to the McElhaney Company, the owners of Tabasco, to secure the rights to use the name and likeness of Tabasco in the show. The company eventually responded by offering said rights and offering to sponsor all productions of the show if it included, among things, a dancing papier-mâché bottle of Tabasco, and that the production company would also hand out little bottles of Tabasco at every performance. The McElhaney Company has said that 1894 is the first year that they have a record of these little bottles being produced. The Boston Globe, in the January 30th, 1894 review of the cadets' Tabasco, praised the company. "Oh, such girls with such slender waists and such clean shaves." And this was very interesting at the time, as the cadets played every role in the show. And therefore, all of the girls with slender waists and clean shaves were the Army cadets. With the success of the cadets' run, Barnet and Chadwick both sought to sell the rights for professional production. Thomas Quigley Seabrooke purchased them, and he had already purchased and starred in at least 2 shows prior to this, so this was just another show in his hat. Upon Seabrooke's request, small changes to the music occurred, while sections of the libretto were to be rewritten. Partially, this was to accommodate for the fact of going from an all-male cast to a male and female cast. According to Chadwick's personal memoirs, he was completely annoyed with Seabrooke's production deal, writing, "Seabrooke's part had to be fattened at all cost." Following rewrites and rehearsal, the new show opened April the 9th in Boston's Museum Theater. Bill Fawcett writes that the cast and conductor were thought of as delights to Chadwick, while Seabrooke was thought a stupid ass without any natural talent. Seabrooke then took his production of Tabasco to New York, where it opened May 14, 1894, and originally slated to run for 4 weeks. It was extended to 3 more, with the New York Daily Tribune calling it an unexpected success and saying Seabrooke's song Swim Out O'Grady is becoming more and more popular. After the show's extended New York run, Seabrooke took the production on tour through the United States. Unfortunately, neither Barnet or Chadwick would follow the production on the road, which led to Seabrooke's failures to seek permission for additional changes to the libretto and music, as well as the failure to pay royalties. For a while, Barnet and Chadwick debated having someone trail the production to collect the royalties, but when this proved too costly, the pair instead turned to sending strongly worded letters to Seabrooke to discontinue productions. In an attempt to escape these royalties, Seabrooke turned to rewriting the show. The next incarnation, The Grand Vizier, opened in New York in March of 1895. Of the changes Seabrooke made, the most recognizable were the title change and the bottle of Tabasco to a bottle of whiskey. In a New York Times review of the production, the reviewer mentions it is closely related to that piece by Barnet and Chadwick, and goes on to state that Dennis O'Grady appears as a wandering Irishman whose talisman is now whiskey instead of pepper sauce. He still sings Swim Out O'Grady. He is still irrepressibly droll. The reviewer also mentions that the words are written by Edgar Smith and the music was ascribed to Frederick Gagel. Barnet and Chadwick once again sent strongly worded letters to Seabrooke, and this time to all cities and municipalities where the performances were to be held, touting legal action if these productions were to continue. Seabrooke returned to Boston and was jailed for a time, emerging with, as one reporter put it, only a scarf pin to his name. Chadwick would recall in his memoirs, he finally escaped all responsibility by going into bankruptcy and taking the poor debtor's oath. Not very long after this, he died. Unfortunately, Chadwick's recollection is incorrect, as Seabrooke would go on to live for a few more years after this incident. But I believe that it is important to note that Chadwick's recollection is most likely looking at Tabasco and Tabasco's death as a performing work. Of many of the unauthorized changes that Seabrooke made within Tabasco, many are not known. The ones that we do know about are ones that are recorded in programs and also the existing material that was found in the trunk. At least 3 additional songs were added to the show: Swim Out O'Grady, Drum Major Jimmy, and Oh Hi. Swim Out O'Grady was added in the first act to replace Song of the Chef, as sung by Francois, and Oh Hi was added in the first act for Lola, played by Elva Croy, who was Seabrooke's wife at the time. This excerpt from the existing second violin book shows the addition of Lola's song on sheet, meaning an additional piece not found within the part book. In this case, it is most likely because it was an unauthorized addition to the show. Here is a program from a production of Tabasco, of Seabrooke's production, where Seabrooke is playing Francois and Miss Elva Croy is playing Lola. If you notice at the bottom, you will see Drum Major Jimmy, composed by Hubbard Smith, Lola's song, Oh Hi, composed by Ludwig Ingerlander, and Swim Out O'Grady, composed by Edgar Smith. Paul Moffray first discovered Tabasco while researching opera programs in an archival collection in New Orleans. By using the existing libretti that he could find, he began piecing together the show. He would eventually discover the autograph score, orchestral parts, and other items that were found in the trunk. He created a performing edition which closely resembles that of the Seabrooke tour. For an updated libretto and stage direction, Moffray tapped Josh Shaw, director of the Pacific Opera Project. This new show premiered in New Orleans January 25th, 2018, running for 2 weeks of sold-out performances in conjunction with the 150th anniversary of Tabasco Sauce. Once again, this production was sponsored by the McElhaney Company and little bottles of Tabasco were handed out, as well as dancing bottles of Tabasco in the show. Here you see a video or a still picture of the cast with Paul Maffray in final bows. In composing Tabasco, George Chadwick looked to something called musical borrowing to help create the score, and in certain cases create a word painting. The first instance of this, or the first instance that I would like to speak to, occurs in the Vizier's Song. Here, Chadwick provides a musical allusion to Wagner's epic, The Ring Cycle. As the Grand Vizier sings "To others come the coupons and the gold," the orchestra plays a musical line that is directly descended from the forging leitmotif. Here is now a clip from the Grand Vizier's Song, sung by Adam Leftwich baritone with conductor Paul Maffray.
The market slumps whenever I take hold, and gets a boom as soon as I have sold. To others come the coupons and the gold, but not to me.
Another instance of musical borrowing in the Vizier's Song is in the final verse, where the Vizier sings about his proposed love marrying another. Here, the orchestra plays a snippet of the first theme of Felix Mendelssohn's Wedding March. Here is, once again, Adam Leftwich performing the final verse of the Grand Vizier's Song with conductor Paul Maffray.
But not to me.
Fatima's recitative and aria in the first act gives a glimpse into her internal and external struggles that she faces within the show. She has been taken as a prisoner and given as a gift to the Bay of Tangier as a concubine. Barnet here employs a rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D in the aria, while Chadwick's score sets the aria in a modified strophic form. Another example of Chadwick's musical parodying and borrowing is the Wagnerian overtones present in the recitative in the first part of this performance. Melissa Marshall performs Fatima's recitative and aria in a semi-staged production conducted by Paul Maffray. Both Chadwick and Barnet stood to gain and benefit from the path and success that Tabasco was on. Had Tabasco not been pulled from performance, it might have reached the fame of the works of Gilbert and Sullivan. Chadwick and Barnet are thought to have begun working on another collaboration, but it never made it further than sketches, most likely due to the trouble Tabasco caused. In my research, I consulted various primary source documents, as you will see listed here on this slide. I also worked with various other documents as included on this slide. And any questions may be directed towards me at this email address on your screen. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed Rediscovering Barnet and Chadwick's Burlesque Opera of Tabasco.